I started thinking about the correlation between masculinity and our relationship with clothing, especially because, I'm 38. I grew up in an era where you were just told that you were gay or effeminate or loser or whatever else. Whatever pejorative that they could come up with at the time, that was what you were for caring about your clothes. And I realized that historically that isn't the case. Men have always cared about clothing. We've always used our appearance as a way to express masculinity. So why is this the case now? And then now teaching men how to take these principles, understand the system that I've created to help them dig up their identity and express their identity through their clothing. That's been my full-time gig for the last 5 years. And the ideal for men is to be very good at being men and also being good men. And we need both in order to really fully realize what our potential is.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I am so excited. Today we have a super amazing guest on today. This is Tanner Guzy. He is a men's image consultant and brand consultant. He is the coolest guy, and guys, he's a life changer. So I'm so excited to have him on. Welcome to the show, Tanner.
Thanks for having me on, Mikey. I'm excited to talk to you today, dude.
Guys, this guy is, if you don't already follow him on social media, we'll have all of his links below. You've got to go follow him. You've got to see what he's about. This guy is he's changing lives with helping you to recognize and shape your image so that you can actually bring your gifts to the world. It's amazing, but I'll let him introduce himself. Tanner, what's your name? What's your brand? What's your mission?
So my name is Tanner Guzy. My operating brand is Masculine Style. And my whole mission is to help men not only express, but really uncover and discover the most confident, most attractive, most integrated and authentic version of themselves by changing the way that they think about their clothing and their appearance.
Wow, guys. I mean, you're feeling the sparkles already. All the guys just were leaning in, turning up the volume. They're like, this is going to be
what?
Awesome.
Clothes?
What, clothes?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and guys, first time I met Tanner, I thought the same thing. I was thinking, wait, how are clothes really going to actually change my life? I'm not kidding. I haven't even started doing my consulting with Tanner yet. I'm waiting for a month when I get back from Florida, and then we're getting going.
Let's go.
But I've already started clearing out my closet and all this other stuff because I'm recognizing the way that I choose to portray myself and how it affects my day and my feelings and everything. Tanner, can you kind of tell people a little bit about your story? How'd you get into it? Maybe, and just kind of, when it finally struck you that this could be a real life-changing opportunity for people.
Yeah. So my story actually starts all the way back when I was in middle school, and I had this conflict of identities where I was really involved in extreme sports, BMX, snowboarding, stuff like that. And then the punk rock music scene. This was skate punk, third wave ska, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, I attended a private school, Christian private school. And these were not only very disparate identities as far as what they valued and, kind of behaviors that were expected and all of that, but they were also very disparate in the way that they expected you to dress. So one of the things that was very interesting, that was very similar between the two of them though, was how important your outward appearance was in accepting you as part of that group and embracing that particular identity. So at the school, I had to wear the uniform, the white shirt, the gray slacks, the rep stripe tie, the navy blazer, all of it. With my friends, it was you had to wear the right band t-shirts or the right battle jacket or the right skate shoes. And you had to, all of it had to be totally dialed in. And as you can imagine, none of the private school stuff coincided with any of the punk rock stuff, and none of the punk rock stuff coincided with any of the private school stuff. And so I was kind of torn between these worlds and these very disparate identities. And that was when I really, at a young age, learned how important our appearance is, not only in expressing to other people so that they will perceive us a certain way or treat us a certain way, but even more so the way that I felt like I was kind of dichotomous and I had two different identities because there was no integration between this appearance and any of that. And so I learned in an early age how important it was. Fast forward to about 10 years ago. So 2010, 2011, I started writing a blog about it because back then people were blogging about stuff. And it was something that I was interested in, especially as I was learning more about masculinity and what it is and why it doesn't exist the way that it used to, or what could be better about it and all of that. And I started thinking about the correlation between masculinity and our relationship with clothing, especially because, I'm 38. I grew up in an era where you were just told that you were gay or effeminate or loser or whatever else. If you, whatever pejorative that they could come up with at the time, that was what you were for caring about your clothes. And I realized that historically that isn't the case. Men have always cared about clothing. We've always used our appearance as a way to express masculinity. So why is this the case now? And anyway, blog took off, got to work for a few years in custom suiting, and then now teaching men how to take these principles, understand the system that I've created to help them dig up their identity and express their identity through their clothing. That's been my full-time gig for the last 5 years.
I think it's amazing. What an intro. Guys, this man knows fashion and he knows how to change your life with it. I love that he looks into, I mean, guys, this is a passion of his, you can tell. And those, everybody knows the best teachers were always the passionate ones. If they loved history, they were a great history teacher. And the fact that Tanner's gone so far as to look into like the history behind fashion and masculinity itself and how they correlate. I mean, it's the coolest stuff, guys. So I can't wait to get into this because I want to get a couple of opinions from Tanner about masculinity and everything. But I do want to also ask him about our main subject, which is always, you know, recovery and how it can propel your momentum towards your goals. So Tanner, I mean, for you in your life, I mean, you've done a ton of things and you've taken a lot of risks making your company and working really hard. I mean, that takes a lot of stress. I mean, that brings a lot of stress into your life. How do you recover from daily stress? And like, even more specifically, maybe what's the tone that you use for that recovery?
I don't. This is one of the things I'm actively working on right now. I am an incredibly uptight person to the point where multiple times at night I wake up because my hands are asleep because they've been clenched in fists that are so tight. You know, like I've started to lose circulation. Like I'm always always hustle, or it's always when that starts to get to the point where it's too heavy, I don't recover, I distract. So I will spend a lot of time binging on a Netflix series, or for me, it's a lot of scrolling through social media, especially because in my head, I can justify that as doing market research, or it's interacting with potential clients, or it's all business related. And so it's very easy for me to justify hours and hours on TikTok or on Instagram or on Twitter as business and as work, when a lot of it really is just distraction. And so recovery is one of the things that's been one of my focuses this year, especially because I see 3 different aspects of recovery. There's probably more. I'm very much learning this as I go. There's like the actual rest and relax, which I'm not good at. There's play, which I'm even worse at. Like I have no idea what to do to play. If you were to just say, okay, don't worry about money, don't worry about social pressure, don't worry about family or anybody else, what could you go do that would just completely immerse you in it and be fun? Because I mean, I enjoy things like I love working out, I love straining my body and tackling new challenges. Like I've done boxing and triathlon and Spartans, and I love all that stuff. It's enjoyable, but it's not play. I have no idea how to play. I have no idea what I would do. And then I think the third component of it is connect with other people. And a lot of times I'm still not even very good at that, because people are worth connecting with, or I get energized about connecting with people, as long as doing so again feeds directly into this grow and build and improve and hustle and all of that as well. Whereas connecting for its own sake is something that I'm not the best at either. So I am very much in need of what you're doing with your show. I am not coming as an expert guest on any of this, because I think one of the best things that I can admit to is I suck at recovery. I'm very, very bad at it.
That's awesome. I think this is going to be so cool because so many people, guys, Tanner's come really far, proving that you can make it places without recovery. It's just going to add a lot of strain in your life if you don't use it. So,
and not just yours, but my wife and my kids and my friendships and my body and all of these, like it's taken a toll on everything. And so there is only so far that you can get without learning how to do this side of it too.
well, and Tanner, I don't know, you might be better at it than you think. I mean, again, the scrolling and stuff, I consider it escapism, probably not really recovery. You're not coming back more fresh. Do you ever, I mean, do you ever do any kind of mindfulness or meditation practices or anything?
I've started to recently. A couple of things that I've started doing is I was planning on doing a Spartan race this year, and I backed out of doing that to take a couple of months to, instead of running on my non-lifting days, started doing yoga.
Right.
And I haven't done enough of that to really feel like that's clicked, but I'm starting to feel some connection with that. And then same thing with both mindfulness, like meditation. I'm starting to do some more breathing exercises. And then when I really am at a point where I have, especially emotions or my own self perceptions that really I need to work through, I found that writing gets to me a lot. And I found actually that I got good at that skill when I was serving a mission for my church, where I couldn't really talk to a lot of people with the frequency or to the extent that I wanted to. And the best place for me to bounce ideas off of was on my own journal. And I'm
Yeah.
recapturing that skill again. Yeah.
I think journaling is amazing. I think everybody who gets into it suddenly realizes they're like, wow, this is like getting my day out. It's helping my mind rest because it doesn't feel like it needs to remember everything. I'm actually remembering it better because I'm writing it down,
Hmm.
helping me reconnect and reflect on my life. I feel like you've done a lot of reflection in your life. I mean, with the way you are so intentional about your lifestyle, and I mean, everything you do, I feel like is really connected to that core mission
Hmm.
of learning and living the masculinity and helping other people to do it as well. I
Yeah.
mean, what kind of reflection do you do? Is it the journaling?
Oh man, reflection is nonstop. It is omnipresent in my life. I mean, even as we're talking about this right now, I'm thinking about this as I go, and I'm just it's self-reflection, it's self-introspection. I wouldn't even say, I don't even know what the term for this is, because it's not, I'm not an introspector, I'm an extraspector, where if I'm talking to people out loud and I'm having conversations about topics that matter to me, that's where a lot of my best insights about myself happen. So it's not when I go into my brain, but it's when I connect with other people and have a conversation about that particular thing that I'm struggling with or that I'm working on, and I get to vocalize my ideas and see how it tastes coming out of my own mouth and see what their reactions are as they hear it. They resonate with it. Is that weird? If it is weird, is it because I'm broken, or is it just because I'm a little bit different? Like, what are all these things? And so
Totally.
I do much more of that extrospection. Again, I don't know if that's a word, but much more of that than introspection.
Well, and the other thing that I think is so cool, on my last podcast, we had Dan Osler on here, and he was pointing out that he's like, look, the more connected you are to your why, the less burnout you have.
Hmm.
And most of the people that have come on here have kind of phrased that as, you know, spiritual recovery, realigning with who you are and what you're trying to do. And they're like, once you actually remember that kind of mentality of where I'm headed and why, they were like, I don't really get as much burnout because I'm kind of fueled by this innate desire inside of me kind of thing. Do
Yeah.
you feel like you connect with that at all? Is that resonating with you?
Yes. The tricky thing that I'm finding though, and I'm learning about myself, is that my why needs to be my why as opposed to the why that I think it should be based on my relationship with my parents when I was a kid, or my wife now, or what I think my why should be based on what I think the best or most ideal version of myself looks like. And being able to dig down into who I really am, what I really want, and what my real why is continues to be a real challenge.
That is so cool. Guys, you're getting the point that he's a very self-aware guy. He has looked at himself in the mirror, he's looked himself up and down, and he knows who he is. And that is the spot to start. You got to know who you are if you're going to figure out where you're headed or how you're going to get where you're headed. And so it's Tanner's really grabbed on to the two things that he really innately is. One, he's a man. He is such a man. If you go follow his social media, you're going to see him working out. You're going to see him giving great advice, amazing opinions. He's just getting out there and embracing his side of life, which is masculinity. And then that other side of him that innately he was just drawn to the clothing, drawn to the crowds, drawn to connecting with people through that. And he leaned into it. Not an easy thing to do.
No, not at all. No, but that's part of what's fun, is that it wasn't easy and I got to forge my own path with it. Yeah,
Was this scary, Tanner?
totally. Totally. I mean, and I'm finding that this is the case with so many things that I do, because I think clothing is more just a vehicle for, I love clothing. It's fascinating to me. It's so interesting. But I would say an even deeper and bigger purpose of that is really understanding masculinity, femininity, godly versions of that, culture, self-fulfillment, all of that. And so when I find that there are these kind of like taboo topics for men to care about, like clothing, and I see that it's not really taboo, then I start to look at things like um expressing emotions, or creating arts, or learning how to dance, or singing in groups of men, or these other things that we're told like men don't do these things. And again, historically, you look back at multiple cultures and men do those things in most of these cultures. And I just kind of, what I'm really enjoying is trying to figure out, how do we do these things in a way that can recapture those things that men used to have and that we don't have in our current culture.
I think this is so cool. I mean, guys, like every time you really hang around Tanner, you're going to recognize that like everything he says is like, it starts to feel right, kind of on a base level where you're like, yeah, why is that weird? Like that shouldn't be weird. Like I like to sing with
Right.
my bros. Like I want to
Right.
sing, I want to do this stuff. And it's like, I've always liked picking out a good outfit and presenting myself well. And it's like, I
Why
don't
are
know
you
why
shamed for
everybody
doing
makes a
that?
big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Why are you shamed for doing that? Why does our culture say that that's no and that's a taboo?
Totally.
And
Well,
especially because then you go the opposite way, which is saying you should do that and you can do that, but there's no masculine or feminine. So dress however you want or sing whatever you want. It's like, I'm not interested in that either. I don't want the androgynous, laissez-faire, anything goes. Like, I don't want that. I want to know what a masculine relationship with clothing, with dance, with art, with film, with music, with physical affection and expression, with violence, with all. I want to know what the masculine version of all of those things are. I don't want either the taboo versions of it or the
totally.
completely open, liberated, androgynous versions of it.
Which is so cool because I mean, in fashion, like you're saying, I mean, in everything, but especially in fashion and stuff, they're trying to get to where it's
Mm-hmm.
all,
You can have cargo shorts and graphic comic book t-shirts, or
yeah.
you can wear dresses, but like those are your two choices. Yeah.
It's get anyway. Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, guys and girls, I don't know. Everybody's trying to kind of mix and match everything. And I don't know, for me, frankly, when I lean into who I believe, as truth, I'm a man. I've got this, I've got this responsibility as a man, and I've got this genetic code as a man. I better operate with myself, I find.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then as I lean into it and as I now express that, I actually find all these new, better ways of living.
Yep. And I would also, I would say that that is one of the things that will end up requiring less recovery from you, is if you can find the
Absolutely.
ways to express and to manifest and to act that are masculine for men or feminine for women, as opposed to, I really need to express emotion, therefore I'm only going to do it in a feminine way because only women express emotion.
Right.
Then you create it's just a different type of tension than what it is to hold on to it. But if you can come up with or discover a healthy masculine way to express emotion, then you actually do get the feeling of that coming out and being expressed, and that being a recharge in and of itself.
Amazing. Really well put. Guys, I think it's so cool. If you start listening to all this stuff that Tanner's putting out, you're going to recognize kind of like your body, it needs exercise. Like a lot of people avoid the gym because it's hard or it's, it's just inconvenient or whatever. Or people make too big a deal out of fitness. As soon as you get in there and you actually work out, you recognize that your body wanted that. Your body needs that. And the thing is that when you start to actually recognize what Tanner's saying, and you learn, and again, learn from an expert, learn from Tanner, learn from all these guys who really draw out masculinity for what it is and how it actually works. And then when you actually put it into practice, you will see the results, and it's going to feel good. It's
Mhm.
going to feel right. And that's kind of, I mean, clothes are a huge part of that.
Yeah. And it may be awkward at first and you're going to be bad at it. You may feel a little bit sore, like, the equivalent of being gym sore. You have to put in the time and be willing to be sincere enough and take the social risks to get good at it. Because it's not going to be like, it would be really easy to go to the gym if the first time we went, everybody dropped 6 inches off their waist and put 6 inches on their shoulders. Like, super easy to just decide I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time to do that. And I mean, anything that's worthwhile is doing that. Can you imagine the first guy that decided, I'm going to put seeds in the ground and I'm going to put them in a row and I'm going to now have food? That, like, there's some real patience and faith and sincerity and all these things that come from it. And it's going to be the same thing with any of this other self-development. Very little of it is immediate. And too many of us are, I don't even, I feel like it's a little bit kind of trite to say that we all just want the immediate gratification. And there's some truth to that. But I
Sure.
think more than just wanting the immediate gratification, what a lot of us, and myself included, and I include myself in this for sure, is that we want to avoid the risk and embarrassment of it not coming easily and not coming right away.
Totally. Totally. Everybody gets that fear and they're going
Mhm.
to give some sort of reason to it. And
Totally.
usually it's someone else is going to see me not doing really amazing. And it's like,
Yep.
who cares?
Right.
I mean, easy to say, I guess,
Right.
but
And that's the other thing that we need to learn is, I mean, gym culture is so good for so many metaphors for this, because
totally.
like I am a judgmental prick. Like I'm a jerk. I'm very judgmental. But I go to the gym and I see the dude or the girl that's 300 pounds and they can barely step up on the treadmill. And even for me, being that guy that's a jerk and judgmental that everybody's scared of, all I think is like, good for you for being in here. Like you're on the team. You were down in the arena. You were doing the work. I don't care where you are. I see you making progress in some good direction. And that matters way more than the dude who's, already jacked, but he's starting to lose it because he's gotten complacent with what it is that he's doing with his life. Yeah,
Totally. Well, and those people don't always see the quick result either.
no,
You get on that treadmill, it's like
it's forever.
even 6 months later, you lost 70 pounds, but you're still looking big. And it's like some people don't get that how far you've actually come, guys. And
Right.
that's a huge point for momentum. Tanner's pointing out a huge law here, which is consistency and also picking a good trajectory. You got
Yes.
to aim at something and then be consistent in it for a long time in order to actually get those results. They may not be instant, but they're coming.
Right.
So that's huge. Guys, I want to ask Tanner because I think it is so interesting to hear about his clients and his work. I mean, Tanner, with your clients, is it immediate results? I'm guessing they have to kind of work at it for a while for whatever they're, I mean, every client that comes to Tanner is a little different. They have different goals, different, perspectives of what they're trying to do. And
Mhm.
he has to meet them where they're at and then
Totally.
help them get where they're trying to go. But I'd love it if you have some examples for the crowd. I think they'd love to hear how fashion has changed lives.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest differences between me and somebody who is like a stylist or a fashion consultant is with them, you usually fill out kind of a quick questionnaire and then they'll take you shopping and you've got a new wardrobe in a few hours, which don't get me wrong is pretty great. And a lot of times you can feel the real difference. But what my experience has been, because when I started, that was what I did, because that's what everybody did, or even as I've worked with other guys that have gone down that route, usually 3 months, 6 months, definitely a year or two later, they're back to wearing what they were before they worked with that stylist, because as good as it looked aesthetically, it didn't feel congruent with who they are and what their self-perception was. And so all they saw staring back at them in the mirror or on a Zoom call or on social media posts was, you're a fraud. This isn't actually who you are, right? And so it does take me longer. I'm working with my clients typically about 2 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, before we even do a single round of shopping, because I need to know who they really are, what it is that they want to express, what it is that they really want to communicate to themselves and to other people, before I can help them come to terms with what kind of things they should be wearing and how they should be pairing them and what their closet should look like. And what's fun is that my clients, most of the time, they have no idea that there's two things that are going to happen when they work with me. One is it ends up being a lot of fun, and two, and like they really do, like most guys hate shopping until they work with me and they're like, holy crap, this is like learning how, like I learned how to play the guitar, and now I can write music, and it's actually really fun to write music because I have the skill set and I can express myself through music when I never could before. It's the same thing with clothing, where it's like you just learn the skill set and then you can express yourself with your clothes just like you can with the way that you speak or the music that you write, or anything else. But then the other thing that they don't really expect until we get into it is the questions that I ask and the system that we go through and the way that we dive down is, I don't take this introspection or this kind of like deep dive that you've already heard me go through with myself. I go through that with my clients. And with a lot of them, I end up knowing them better than anybody in their lives, including their wives or their kids, because nobody cares. I mean, this is the sad thing for a lot of men, is nobody cares to ask them questions like who you are. What would you like your eulogy to sound like? What's the impact that you want to leave on the world? What's where do you fit within the status of your company, and how do you contribute to the company's overall mission, and what would you like to do to be able to better contribute to that? Nobody cares. Nobody asks men those types of questions. And so for them to have me not only ask them that and help them uncover that themselves, but then also teach them how to be able to reflect that to themselves and to other people through the way that they dress, they end up coming out of it with a whole different sense of, one, who they are, but their surety in who they are, their ability to express themselves, and their confidence to be able to be authentically and congruently who they are in whatever situation they find themselves. And so it's very different than, let's just find you some cool clothes and get you looking like GQ.
Well, and let's point out, I mean, how many people would, if they could just pay a sum of money so that they could actually feel like they were really portraying themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something people desperately want, and they don't know how to get it.
Right. We want to be understood. We all want to be understood. And that means even understanding ourselves. And so much of that misalignment comes from the stories that we tell ourselves based on what our appearance is. Because we see ourselves every day. It may be like you and I are seeing each other right now on a Zoom call, maybe in the mirror when you're getting ready in the morning. But if you're lying to yourself every day, you start to believe that lie, you start to embody that lie, and you start to become that persona, and you won't understand yourself. And how can anybody else understand you?
Well, and guys, Tanner's a little bit of like a therapist in that sense, where
Yeah,
when he meets with you guys, I mean, and that's the reason I'm so excited to get started with him, because he helps you actually look from an outside perspective at your inner workings and how you've been through things, traumas, different lies you might be telling yourself. You might be like the greatest person with so much potential, but the world's just, it's a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be telling yourself all these things that are just holding you just back from the life that you feel like you should be living. And somebody like Tanner, who can help you not just recognize it, but then take action and do something that is going to be a reflection, like you said, seeing in the mirror every day and feeling at peace and at your center with who that person in the mirror is going to take all the resistance away.
Yep.
All these, there's a sweet metaphor. Used to love it. Used to always tell it. Forgot it till now. But it was like, don't try and add on all these things. It was like, just try and get rid of your one big thing. There's usually, I mean, you've got all these weights attached to your ankle in life, but there's usually one big thing. And if you can get rid of that, you're going to go so much faster.
Yep.
And having someone like Tanner is a great way to identify that one big thing.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of I love that idea. And I think that's part of the reason why there's so much resistance to clothing, especially on the part of men, because clothing usually feels like an adding on, especially because when you think about it, most of us, when we develop whatever our sense of style is, it's usually sometime around middle school or high school. And what we're doing is, in order to fit in with our peers, we are creating a type of persona. And we talk the way that that persona does. We dress the way that persona does. We act and laugh at the same jokes. Like, we all become and kind of embody this bit of a persona so that we can fit in with the people that we admire, the people that we want to fit in with. And then we largely forget it. And hopefully it's because we grow and we become more authentic and more congruent in who we are. But if that's your only relationship with when you care about your clothes, then yeah, you're going to resent the idea of, I'm not going to now start caring about my clothes, because that means I'm abandoning who I really am and I'm adding something false to it. And I'm trying to create a persona through this new clothing. And really it's the opposite. It's, we're trying to pare all of those old identities, those old personas and everything down, and then have you dress in a way that reflects the real you, so that that's what you see and that's what other people see, is the real you instead of those personas.
Well, and guys, once you're aligned like that, I mean, the world is yours. You're not worrying about all these other little things of how you're being perceived, because you're being now intentional and recognizing that you've been coached and you've made a plan and you're being you.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. I kind of want to ask Tanner, because I mean, we don't have all day, but we do have a little bit of time. Yeah. I want to ask, you know, I think personally, there's been a huge attack on masculinity over the last several decades. And I've grown up in a world where it's kind of been a little bit belittled to be like a father, a good father figure, or, you know, they're always making the dads kind of silly on the cartoon.
Right. Homer Simpson, Phil Dunphy, all of that. Yeah.
All of them.
Peter Griffin, all of it.
And I think guys are a little afraid to take charge nowadays, and not in like a bad way, but in a leaderly, you know, compassionate, guiding way. how can men be a little more masculine in their father roles and in maybe even in like dating and things like that?
I'd say the biggest thing, I was actually at lunch with a friend today and we were talking about this. Most men, most males, because I don't even know if we deserve to call guys that don't embody this man, because man is a term that needs to be qualified for, right?
Guys,
So
that
most
should
guys or dudes or
sting.
males,
That
right?
should sting a little,
Yeah, that
guys.
should sting a little. But they are either passive or reactive as opposed to being active and proactive. And that doesn't mean you're domineering or that you have that you're asserting your will over other people, but it means that you're not constantly waiting around for other people to give you permission or for the green light from some other authority figure, from your wife or your girlfriend or your mom or your dad or somebody else. It's not that you're waiting for the perfect plan to start your business or to get into better shape, or I know exactly what I'm going to major in, and so this is now when I'm going to start going to school. It's being willing to act and be proactive, and then adapting that movement and that action to then fit the needs as you go along. But too many of us are too passive and too reactive.
You guys got to go back and re-listen to that. That was awesome. Guys, being passive and being reactive is no way to live. The only way that I really got past that was by one, taking ownership for my life, and also meditation. Meditation actually helped me recognize that I could, through breathing and everything, I could change my emotions. And I recognize that I choose my emotions. So being reactive to any situation is never going to be optimal. Be action oriented, have a goal, have a plan, chase that plan.
Well,
And go ahead.
It can be so simple too, because okay, here's a good example where men are taught and it's treated like a joke, but it's also treated as kind of like a wink of a joke. And this is actually a good thing. And I think in a lot of ways it is a good thing, but like, we're told that women just want to talk about things and talk about their feelings, and men want to solve problems, right? The whole commercial, like the woman with the nail in her forehead,
Nail
like
in
we
the
all
head
go
or
back
whatever,
to that.
yeah.
It's the nail in the forehead. But here's some of the things that I found. Here's one of the most proactive things that I've discovered just within the last couple of weeks, that it's almost frustrating how well that it works. Because let's say that I'm dealing with something like I'm waiting to turn left and the person in front of me is on their phone, and so they miss the green arrow, and then I end up missing the light, right? The solution is to lay on my horn, or I should have left earlier, or I should have done X, Y, or Z thing. And that's the action to take. But that really doesn't actually solve the problem. And then I continue to, one, it doesn't solve that immediate problem. And then two, it just continues to be that I'm angry, and I'm justified in being angry anytime that I miss a light because some idiot in front of me isn't paying attention to what's going on the road. What I've learned recently is one of the simplest actions that actually can change my whole emotional state is, I'm pissed off about this, and I accept that. I accept that bugs me. It's okay that bugs me. Or this happened and I accept that bugs me. It's just this like, okay, that's the reality. I'm choosing to accept this. And it's amazing how it gives that sense of control back. And you don't have to control the outward circumstances, but you control your inward response to it. I'm by no means great at this yet, but it's incredible how many times that's already served me, whether it's with my wife or my kids or with other circumstances related to work or anything else. And it's just like, okay, this bugs me. I accept that. Or this happened and I accept that. And my acceptance is an action in and of itself.
I love that. Guys, if you got anything out of this podcast, that would be a great takeaway. I mean, the fact that you just, you go, I don't have to control everything. It happened,
It did. You can't. I mean, you can't control everything, right?
Doesn't mean I have to be happy about it, but it doesn't mean I have to go and try and change it now.
Exactly.
Huge.
Exactly.
Tanner, you are learning the coolest lessons, man.
Did you learn? So hard, dude. It is not fun because I've got a lot of my own demons I'm working through right now, and a lot of my own baggage and personas and these other things that have accumulated for 2 decades that have really just kind of reared themselves up in the last year. And I, the facade has been forced to disappear, and it's not easy. It's not fun. And it's also very encouraging to see that it's possible as I'm going through it too.
I love that. I mean, you're a guy with goals and you're a guy with vision. I mean, and I think your impact is eventually just going to be spread so far and wide. I think so many people are going to start to notice that, hey, it's not like, you know, the clothes and the masculinity and my identity should be the last thing on my mind, and I should be taking care of my work stuff first or whatever. It's like, no, I should start here.
Mhm.
And I think that message just, it needs to get around.
Yeah.
How can, I mean, I don't know. I mean, and I don't expect you to have every answer, but I'm just curious if there's, you know, what are the ways that guys can, you know, if maybe they grew up with six sisters and a mom and they want to get that masculinity, where do they start to learn about it? Do they read about stoicism or like all this, or like the how to be a good father thing, or where do they start?
The two things that had the biggest impact for me, because when I look at a lot of the things that I've read or time that I've spent on the internet, um, there are things that can be really good, but they also come with a lot of pitfalls and things like that with it. You can look at red pill stuff or MGTOW or some of these other things. And I found from my own experience, that a lot of times that's just creating another persona. The
Yeah.
two things that I would say that have had the biggest impact have been getting in the gym and doing strength training, because there's something about when you treat your body like strength matters. And strength is one of those things, like, yes, strength is possible for women too, but women have never been valued for their physical strength. It's a nice to have, but it's not a need to have. Whereas in across all other cultures, it is a necessity for men to be physically strong. Right. And so when you kind of embrace that aspect, I found, here's a good example. Um, when I'm frustrated with my kids and my tendency is to change my tone of voice and express that irritation in a way that isn't actually good for them, it's just me just getting like escaping the tension. I
Totally.
can remind myself, one, tension under the bar is a good thing and I need to move it the right way. So this tension is a good thing and I need to move it the right way too. And if I do it the right way, I even have this little thing. A couple of my buddies that lift with me, we do this all the time, where we'll talk about a way that we emotionally handled something better. And it's like 5-pound PR, 5-pound emotional PR right there, 5-pound social PR right there, because you learn what it's like to make this slow, linear progress and to know that you're coming in, you're doing the work all the time, and it never feels like it happens as quickly as it does. And so really getting comfortable with strength training is huge. I recommend everybody do that. And then another thing that I recommend everybody do is train in a combat sport, boxing, MMA, jujitsu, something where you have to spar and where it's scary and where it's going to hurt. The first time you get punched in the face, you realize you're not as fragile as you think you are. And it takes so much of the fear that many of us walk around with, and it just completely eradicates it. There's
Totally.
something so critical about failure, whether it's getting punched in the face or going through a rough breakup. For me, it was an ugly divorce, losing a business. There's something about failure that we need to experience more of it and be willing to learn from it. I think a lot of men lack confidence because they haven't failed enough. And so it's still this big, scary boogeyman, as opposed to this thing where it's like, yeah, I fail a lot. I fail all the time. And I'm still a pretty decent person and I continue to grow. And so no single failure is insurmountable in and of itself. I can just learn from it and move on and do the next thing. And so, yeah, lift weights, train a combat sport, fail more. There you go.
Guys, that was so good. I mean, I know I'm just geeking out today, but like, oh my gosh, I think everything in this world is backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You think you got to like have possessions to be happy, and then you realize you don't need any possessions to be happy. Like you think you're, you know, going to be more confident by winning. It's actually probably because you failed so much and kept getting up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think, you know, you get hit in the face, that's going to be like a bad thing. And you're like, that's the best thing for my mentality ever. Like,
Yep.
I mean, it's just all backwards, but that's why we find people who have had experiences and great, you know, have great thoughts, and that's why we do the podcast. Change lives.
I love it.
You know, what's like a really big, is there a big lesson that you're going through right now that you're learning, or maybe a big lesson in life that you've learned?
I mean, basically, that's what we've talked about for the last 45 minutes.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, the personas that I've created and dealing with learning how to not just go all the time or distract when I'm not going, but learn how to properly relax, learn how to relearn how to play. It's finding, I've found in a lot of ways, I've allowed myself to become very one dimensional. and I need to embrace the multidimensionality that I'm capable of, and that I want to be, that I want to embody.
I have another question because I'm curious about this. Um, with like, because I'm always talking about how, you know, if you go to the gym, when do your legs once and you can't do them the rest of the week, yes, you've got momentum, but you don't have as much momentum as if you recovered and went three
Mhm.
times that week.
Yeah.
And so, with like, if people take this journey and they want to become more masculine and they begin to really care about their apparel and everything they're wearing, you know, is there a way that they can continually keep growing momentum in that category, or does that just feed into other parts of their life?
I don't know if there's, I think there's a trade-off to how much you can do in a particular category, or even what it's worth it. Okay.
Totally.
It's almost like logarithmic, which is, you know, the opposite of exponential, where as you get further along, progress gets harder and harder to get. Again, strength training is a perfect example of this, where when you first start going to the gym, you get the newbie gains. You're adding, you know, 10, 15, sometimes 20 pounds to a lift every week. And then you get to the point where you're kind of an advanced lifter. And in order to get a 5-pound PR, you have to change everything about your diet and everything about your sleep habits. And you have to eat this many more calories, and you have to add this much body fat, and you lose all of these like hormonal balances. And it's like, is that really worth it for an extra 5 pounds? And so I think one of the tricks is learning what a good maintenance point is for what your physique is, for what your, the amount of effort or energy you put into your appearance and your style,
Sure.
to the nature of your relationships with your friends versus what it's like to be, you know, what your expectations are around your home and how clean it should be, or other things. I think there's this point where the continued effort is not worth the minimal amount of extra reward you're getting. And that's different for everybody, which is what makes it really, really tricky to find that trade-off.
Sure. Well, and I'm curious about this because I think a lot of people are like, well, if what I'm wearing really does tell everybody who I am, what if I don't fit in anymore? You know, do you have any clients that they've started wearing different clothes and then, you know, maybe they weren't hanging around the same friends anymore, or maybe, you know, their life changed in a lot of ways? Has that happened very much, or does
it
that happen?
it hasn't happened for me in a long time, and part of that is because I, the clients that did happen early on with were the clients that hadn't made the other more important changes, their changes in their self-perception, changes in their physique, or anything else related to their health, their relationships, their wealth, their career. What I've found is that guys already have to have some level of momentum that's built up, so that they're not held back by the idea of, oh, I'm not going to be the same person that I used to be. You don't want to be the same person that you used to be. You want to be a better version. You want to grow. And there will be the crabs in the bucket mentality. And hopefully you've already allowed those relationships to naturally go the direction that they're going to go. And so, no, I don't deal with that very often with clients anymore, because I actively screen for guys who have already dealt with that with other things. That's when they're really ready to start focusing on their appearance and their clothing.
I love that. I love that. So if I mean, man, I'm trying to think. This just so there's so many. I could keep you on here all day, but let's really quick. I want to. I mean, I'm gonna let everybody else go and find your stuff. There's so many things, guys, that Tanner brings to this world, and he's got huge plans for other shifts, and you know, and just in his local community and how he's helping everybody. Tanner, I want to ask you kind of final question. But first, I'd love to ask for book recommendations. Is there any books or any speakers that you listen to that you think deserve a shout out?
Okay. There's two that I'm reading right now that have been really poignant in my own kind of self-discovery. One of them is called Healing the Shame That Binds You.
Nice.
And the other is called The Body Keeps a Score, which is actually a really fascinating book. It talks about how our body and our psyche are way more interconnected than we think they are. And so when you're dealing with things like trauma or neglect or abuse or PTSD, or even just regular irritation, frustration, that there's almost always a physical manifestation of that. And not only does the psyche feed the body, but the things you do with the body can also affect the psyche. It's a relationship that works both ways. Again, I think that's why strength training and combat training and all of that are so important, because when you start changing the way that you feel based on what you do with your body, you have a lot more, you have a lot bigger of a spectrum and a lot more control over that. So those are the two that are kind of the biggest ones right now. Another one that I always recommend, especially for guys who are really just kind of starting to explore this idea of what healthy masculinity looks like. It's called The Way of Men by Jack Donovan. And in it, he breaks down kind of this big question of what is cross-cultural, across time and history, everything else. What is masculinity? And one of the things that he does very well is he helps distinguish the difference between being a good man and being good at being a man, because you can have bad people that are very masculine, and you can have good people that aren't very masculine at all. And the ideal for men is to be very good at being men and also being good men. And too often, especially in kind of a modern, both Christian and postmodern kind of social justice culture, we focus too much on the being good person and the not being good at being a man aspect of it. And we need both in order to really fully realize what our potential is.
I love how simple that is.
Right? It's so simple. Like Jack totally nailed it with that. And so those are the ones I would recommend right now.
I love it. Awesome, Tanner. Okay, last question here, and we'll wrap it up. But thank you again for your time. This has been a blast for me. But
yeah, great conversation.
I want to know if everybody in the world saw this part right here, what would your message to the world be?
Oh man, that's not an easy question.
No.
I would say, and this is again something that I'm working on myself, is find out who you really and truly are. And not one of my problems with authenticity is that authenticity is often used to justify the laziest parts of ourselves. Find being authentic, if any sort of any sort of self-direction, self-development, self-improvement is actually just self-hatred. And the only reason you would ever seek to change yourself is because you hate yourself. And I really disagree with that idea. So find out who you really are, start there, and then what the idealized version of who that authentic person really is, and then start putting your energy into bridging that gap.
Huge. Guys,
there you go.
Tanner Guzy. Guys, go look him up. We're going to have all of his links below every episode. Go check him out. Tanner, is there a better spot for people to find you?
Yeah, I mean, social media, I'm super active on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It's all at Tanner Guzy. If you guys want to check out the main site, it's masculine-style.com. You can go read my book about all of this, about how appearance and masculinity are related. It's called The Appearance of Power. So yeah, those are usually the best spots to find and connect with me.
So great. Thanks for coming on, Tanner.
Thanks, Mikey. It's been great, dude.